All right, wonderful. Well, I just wanted to start off by saying welcome. April is Sexual Assault Awareness Month. So we are going to have a discussion today about the relationship surrounding the culture of sexual violence and how we can work towards a cultural change and the elimination of sexual assault and relationship violence. Sexual assault and relationship violence does not discriminate. It can happen to any person at any time. Therefore, it is really important to work within our community to spread awareness and understanding of the prevalence of sexual and relationship violence. As members of a campus community, when we become more aware of our campus and community culture, including who sexual and relationship violence affects the most and how to stop it, we'll succeed in helping to create an environment where all students can safely pursue their education and work towards achieving their goals. My name is Shannon Ketchum. I am the manager of student programs at Spokane Community College. I oversee awareness and prevention education programming at SCC, and I am also a certified Title IX investigator, which means that I receive and investigate complaints of sexual misconduct, sexual harassment, gender-related violence, including stalking and intimate partner violence, and protected class discrimination and harassment and related retaliation. I do want to go ahead and turn it over to my awareness and prevention education programmer, Charlene, to introduce herself.
Hi, everyone. I am Charlene Springer, and I am the Awareness and Prevention Education Student Programmer at SCC. I work in student activities and provide support and delivery of programming and educational initiatives to college faculty, staff, and students to support awareness education and personal development in areas such as sexual misconduct, alcohol and drug use, students' rights and responsibilities, and general well-being. And I would like to welcome you to our resource hour.
Wonderful, thank you, Charlene. So we want today's conversation really to be a learning opportunity for our campus community. We want to remain respectful and support the spirit of prevention education and understanding available resources and services. As a disclaimer, we also recognize today's topics are sensitive, difficult, and maybe triggering for survivors and victims of sexual and relationship violence. We will certainly provide information during and towards the end of today's conversation regarding both campus and community resources for support and advocacy. So we want to begin today's session with the introductions of our featured guests and some remarks from today's featured resources, End Violence Against Women International, EVAWI, and Lutheran Community Services Northwest, regarding the background and mission of their organizations. We'll then discuss a few questions surrounding the culture of relationship and sexual violence and how to work towards meaningful culture change when it comes to the concepts of consent, bystander intervention, recognizing signs of unhealthy relationships, and creating a trauma-informed culture of support and understanding surrounding the experiences of survivors of sexual and relationship violence. We also would like to offer the opportunity today for our featured resources to answer any questions from today's participants. If you have a question for our featured guests, please type into the chat or use the raise hand feature, and we'll work to address your question as we move through today's discussion. So with that, I want to turn it over for introductions from our featured guests today from Lutheran Community Services. We have Allison Jones-Lockwood and Bridget Yakamoto from EVAWI, End Violence Against Women International. So take it away.
Hey, good morning or afternoon. This is Bridget Yamamoto. I'm actually from Lutheran Community Services, and Allison is from EVAWI. So just
my apologies, folks.
No, that's fine. Good morning, or afternoon. Again, my name's Bridget. I use she, hers, and hers pronouns. And I'm a Washington State certified sexual assault and crime victim advocate. I work at the Spokane County local community sexual assault program. Every county has a community sexual assault program with advocates. The number of advocates on staff. Really kind of just depends on each county. But yeah, I work with all victims of crime, and I appreciate you having us here.
Thank you, Bridget. We appreciate you being here. And Allison from EVAWI, my apologies. Love to hear from you and a little bit about your organization.
Thank you for having us. My name is Allison Jones-Lockwood. I am the Training and Technical Assistance Specialist and Start by Believing Community Liaison for End Violence Against Women International. I've been with EVAWI for close to 9 years. Prior to that, I was Director of Advocacy Services for a Rape Crisis Center. So my background is in sexual assault advocacy. I've been in this movement for about 20 years. As an organization, we are an international organization. We focus the majority of our efforts in the United States, and we provide training to criminal justice professionals to improve their response to gender-based violence.
Thank you for sharing that, Allison. So we wanted to go ahead and just start off with a few discussion questions. Certainly we could go a full couple hours on a discussion or more regarding sexual assault awareness and the various topics that fall into that category of consent, bystander intervention, rape culture. But we have a few questions prepared that we wanted to hear from both EVAWI and Lutheran Community Services on. And again, we certainly want the opportunity for our participants to be able to ask questions or find out a little bit more information about resources today. So to start us off, one of the questions that came up as we were thinking about the importance of this discussion today is what we can do as a campus community to educate around the culture of consent and appropriate and safe bystander intervention. Would you mind speaking to that?
Sure. Hey, this is Bridget here again. So that's a great question. It can be really difficult and kind of slow movement to get a campus culture that's really consent focused in all aspects. I think what's really important is to know that consent isn't just synonymous with sexual expression and things like that. Consent can be used everywhere, and it's kind of something that starts with you and kind of sharing it with your inner communities, and then building on so on. So speaking from like more of a campus area, I think it's important to, you know, making sure that people feel included and everything is inclusive to everybody. Kind of changing the language in our classrooms, in our flyers and places like that, that are person-centered and, again, just really inclusive, offering lots of opportunities or choices when it comes to providing resources and things like that. Yeah, that's a little bit there.
I think we start laying the foundations for consent when children are very young. And I think, you know, when I was in college and I was starting to get involved with the Women's Center, we were just starting to talk about consent. Before that, when we were doing presentations, it was how women can stay safe. And the focus of education was on how women can stay safe, because it was our job to keep our bodies safe. And over 20 years, things have evolved greatly. And now we're seeing more of the foundations for the work that we're doing taking place in elementary school in very, very age appropriate ways, but teaching children that they're in control of their bodies. It's their choice whether they want to give someone a hug or a high five, or whether they want to go on a play date with somebody, and teaching them that they have the power to choose what they're comfortable with from the very beginning helps us explain consent when they're older and able to give consent to sex. It's very hard to change the dynamic when we've told children for years, yes, you have to give your grandma a kiss on the cheek. Yes, you have to give your grandma a hug. And then how do we flip the dynamic and teach them what consent is later on? So I believe we're laying the foundations for that at a very young age. And then we just keep the conversation going and showing what active participation looks like. What does active consent look like?
Thank you so much, Bridget and Allison. And really my takeaways from that, I'm hearing about the importance of creating inclusive and welcoming environments, as well as creating those healthy and respectful boundaries very early on. So very much appreciated. I believe Charlene has our next question.
Yes, unfortunately on college campuses, we may at times hear individuals freely use terms like slut or whore, or you know, make inappropriate comments such as, you know, oh, that test was so difficult, it raped me, or, you know, just comments that as individuals or members of campus community, you know, how should we handle that sort of thing? Or, you know, should we call a person out when somebody makes inappropriate statements like that?
I've always been kind of under the mindset of, we can't fight every single battle and we can't win every single one. And I've always operated under the mindset of, is this somebody that I have a teachable moment with? And if I determine, yes, I can provide information to change the way this individual thinks, then absolutely I'm going to call the person out for that kind of language, because language matters. But I also understand that, like I said, we can't win every single battle. And when we go up against every single one, then we get that battle fatigue as advocates and as educators. So I think kind of assessing the situation of determining, is this a teachable moment? Is this something where I can shine the light on this? Is it not? Is it within my resources to be able to do this? But I think overall, we need to teach people that language matters. And this is language about everything that we talk about, whether we make fun of somebody because they have a disability, or we make fun of somebody's sexual orientation. Our language matters. The words that we use to other people matter. And again, going back to that early age focus, we need to teach our kids as they're growing up that the words that they say can have an impact on other people.
Yeah, I agree with you, Allison, that the words matter. A lot of those terms, you know, it's oppressive in its own way. And we're changing society to be, again, inclusive and accepting, and choosing battles. It can be really difficult. And I think kind of being, if you want to call yourself more of an ally or bystander, it's knowing what your limits are as to how comfortable you are to maybe educate somebody who has said something that's offensive, oppressive, or derogatory, things like that. But talking about, you know, if it's a friend or a close family member, you know, it's not starting confrontation. This is if you're feeling able to educate that person in the moment, you know, do it from that kind of standpoint. You can offer like, hey, you know, you mentioned this word or this phrase and I don't appreciate it. Could we have a conversation about why that's not a great use of language? Or this is kind of the backstory of why that terminology is used, and we're now in a culture of creating change. And that might open kind of a ripple effect. You know, it's very difficult to walk up to a stranger who you've heard say something like that and come at them. And again, people feel very confrontational. But if you're able to educate and talk kindly with close family and friends, you know, you're passing that torch on to them, and maybe they're going to be able to talk to somebody that you don't know and educate them. And we start, like I said, this ripple effect of just changing language and things like that.
Thank you. I think that you know, it's good to set an example and You know, sometimes people just aren't aware of, you know, the things that are coming out of their mouth. And sometimes when it's pointed out to them, it makes them realize, you know, what they're saying and that it is inappropriate and that some people may be offended by what they're saying.
Again, thank you so much for your responses and insights on that, Bridget and Allison. So our next question that we had is, we know that there are a range of negative issues and trauma responses that a victim or survivor of sexual or relationship violence may be struggling with following an assault or a pattern of relationship violence. What can we do as a campus community or as individuals to better support survivors and victims in the immediate aftermath, as well as on a longer term basis?
I think I'll go first because I've got this nice graphic behind me.
Nice, perfect.
You know, everybody deals and responds with trauma in a very different way, and I want to own that and honor that first. Some people will be emotional, some people will be sarcastic, some people will be very calm, very collected, some people will be very stoic. Many of them are unsure about disclosing, even to their closest friends and family members, because of feelings of shame, feelings that they will be doubted, and just fear after fear after fear beyond that. And so we always say that there are 3 simple responses to disclosure. First is saying, I believe you. Second is saying, I'm sorry that this happened to you. Third is, I'm here for you. And I would even add a 4th one on there saying, how can I help? We want to make sure that they know that, one, this is a supportive place. I'm a supportive person for them to confide in. We want that to validate their experience. We want to let them know that we are here to help in whatever they want us to help with. Sometimes as friends and family members, we get caught up in responding in a way of what we think they should do, what we think is best for them. But we need to remind ourselves that it's not about what we want them to do, it's about what they want to do. What do they want to move forward with? Do they want to move forward at all? Do they want to tell anybody else? And asking them that simple question, how can I help, helps us determine what they want and then what they need from us in that journey.
Thank you, Allison.
Yeah, that's great. Sorry about that. I completely agree with Allison. We actually have lots of our EVAWI stickers posted all over our buildings, and whenever we're out in the community that have those top 3 statements of how you can believe a friend or family member or person who maybe is disclosing. And again, the first thing is believing them. And holding space for somebody. That's just maybe sitting and listening, and you don't have to say anything. And letting that person know that, again, you're there to support them. And maybe you're not the expert in what's going on, but now that you've kind of learned of what resources are in the area, you can just even say, hey, I'm here for you. I have these great resources or contact numbers. Would you like to call together, or would you like to go there together so we can both learn about what your next steps are, or options? That way you're empowering that person to have control over the situation, because sexual violence it's taking away somebody's control of that situation. And so just providing, that kind ear and just being with somebody is just really helpful.
While according to research, and the majority of sexual assault victims are women, according to research, men are also victims of sexual assault and abuse. And so how can we better disseminate information on resources and support, and help men to become more comfortable speaking out about their experiences with sexual and relationship violence?
One thing that kind of pops up to me is it kind of goes in line with our consent and changing terminology. You can do the same type of change in language on flyers and resources to be very inclusive. For instance, we support all genders, all identities. You can provide statistics and things like that that cover a wide range of our populations who are affected. Just to indicate that, again, this is not just gender specific. This happens to all ages, all identities, all genders, at different ages in our lives and things like that. And recognizing that some people may prefer to talk to one person over another and not taking that personally if somebody isn't wanting to disclose with you or have you in that area. Those are just some examples.
I definitely agree with that. I think, in the education standpoint, yes, but also our images that we use in our programming, we need to be inclusive from a visual aspect too. So having males in our images, having people of color in our images, having different able-bodied people in our images help people understand that this is a broad spectrum of people that are that experience sexual violence.
Thank you. And I wanted to note for those that have joined as participants in today's conversation, I did go ahead and put the Every Response Matters graphic that you see up behind Allison as a file in the group chat. So you should have access to that to be able to download. And if you can't read what's behind Allison, you'll have access to see it. If it's okay with you, Allison, we'll also send that out as a follow-up to today's meeting.
Absolutely, that'd be great. And we use this graphic for social media all the time. So anybody is welcome to use it and post it on their own.
Fantastic. It looks like we just had another guest join us. Super exciting. So I wanted to move forward to our next question. The LGBTQIA community is also disproportionately impacted by sexual assault and abuse. Can you speak to this and share any information on available support and advocacy resources?
Bridget, I'm going to let you go first since you're more in the direct line of work and we're not doing any direct service these days. So I think you might know more of that, okay, especially on the local level.
Okay, thanks, Allison. So yeah, our LGBTQ plus communities are disproportionately impacted. And, a lot of times they prefer to work with community partners within their own community. So a lot of times when sexual violence or other kind of violence happens within that smaller disproportionately impacted community, their offenders are also in that community, which can be really difficult to open up and talk about. We do have several resources in town to help get people connected. For instance, the Odyssey Youth Movement, which is up on Perry Street, is like a drop-in center, and they have drop-in hours for late teen adolescents all the way up to emerging adulthood. And they always have great resources as to, who's available in town or what's the best place to go. That's just one example that we have. Another piece is, we have our 24-hour crisis support line where you can call in confidentially. You don't have to give a name. You don't have to give necessarily your story by any means. But you can talk to a human being on the phone and say, this is what's going on. And if you feel comfortable saying I'm in this community and I don't know where I can go to be safe, and we can help guide you to those local resources or figure out what's best for that particular survivor. there's lots of information on a website from EVAWI, but also RAIN. They offer a lot of resources and places to connect with individuals to help on those kind of pieces.
Bridget, do you by chance have that crisis support line number?
I do. It's area code 509-624-7273. And again, that crisis support line, if you call, we're there 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. You will speak to a Washington State certified sexual assault and victim advocate, someone like myself. We are also now offering some text options. If you text that same phone number during our business hours, you'll get a real person to text back and forth with if you don't feel comfortable calling. Again, that phone number is area code 509-624-7273.
And I did go ahead and put that in the chat for the participants with a little bit of information that you shared on that, Bridget. You'd also mentioned rain.org, and I went ahead and put that link in the chat as well. So hopefully folks.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. And Charlene, I think you have the next question.
Yeah. So what is the one thing that you wish more people knew and understood about sexual and relationship violence?
Wow, that's a big one. It's hard to pick just one. I guess the thing that pops into my brain is that the vast majority of victims who say they were sexually assaulted were in fact sexually assaulted. We have this myth in our society that most victims are lying about it, or that false reports of sexual assault are really high, when we know from research that about 2 to 8% of reports of sexual assault are false. So it's much, much, much lower than people believe in, and frankly, what most people want to believe. Back to the graphic that's behind me at the top, it says hashtag Start By Believing. Start By Believing is our public awareness campaign that is geared toward changing the way we respond to disclosures of sexual assault. Rather than responding with doubt and blame, it encourages community members and criminal justice professionals to respond with an open mind, to believe the victim, and of course, if it's law enforcement, to then of course do a full and thorough investigation. Friends or family members are often the very first person that somebody will tell after they've been sexually assaulted, and negative reactions can actually cause greater harm than not disclosing at all. So we need to make sure that our friends and our family members and those support people are equipped with the same things that we equip criminal justice professionals with.
Yeah, along the lines of what Allison said, that the false reports of sexual assault survivors reporting that 2 to 8% range, that's the exact same amount as any other crime of false reports. So again, the amount of false reports that maybe the media or that we hear around, that there's so many false reports or unfounded, it's not true. And again, that's Start By Believing. We participate in that Start By Believing Day every year. And I think what's really important to know is if somebody's disclosing to you, it's because they have enough trust that you can handle those pieces. And so by responding in a way of just being supportive and that you're going to be with this person is going to be so helpful. And again, you can reach out to advocates in any of the county area, and they can walk you through what reporting looks like. These are not pieces you have to do on your own. There are experts out there that are free and have some really great resources. We work really closely with our law enforcement officials within Spokane County, and we can let you know what it looks like to report if that's something you even want to do. And again, this is all up to the choice of the survivor.
Thank you both to Bridget and Allison. Before we move on to our next portion, which is we want to open it up for the participants joining us today to be able to ask questions of our featured resources. Just wanted to make a quick note. I've also uploaded a couple documents that include some of our not only community resources, including Lutheran and the Victim Link app information from EVAWI, but also our campus-based resources for reporting, mental health support, and general services. So those are both uploaded for victims or survivors of sexual assault, as well as helping a friend or someone close to you that may have recently or in the past experienced a sexual assault. So we certainly encourage you to take a look at those resources. At this time, I want to go ahead and open it up. We have a few guests that have joined us on the call today, either by phone or video. Are there any questions from our participants? And you can either enter that into the chat or you can use the raise hand feature, and I'm happy to take you off of mute. Okay, at this time, I'm not seeing any questions come in through the chat or through the raise hand feature. I think one off the script question I would want to ask of both Allison and Bridget today is what are some of the services and resources that you would want our campus community to know more about and to be more equipped to be able to offer that information to a friend, to a family member, to someone they care about that has experienced a sexual assault or relationship violence of any kind?
Sure. As far as direct services, just knowing that the Lutheran Community Service Victim Advocacy Program, it's free, it's confidential. We can work with not only the survivor, but with family or friends who are also being affected, because we know that this is a ripple effect on the lives of those supporting the survivors. We're a little bit unique in our strategy. We actually respond to all the local area hospitals if someone comes in and identifies as a sexual assault survivor. And if they decide to go through with a sexual assault exam, they can have an advocate available to them, again, 24 hours a day, 365. It looks a little bit different now with our COVID situation, but we can still get everybody hooked up with an advocate. The advocate will let you know what your rights are, what resources they have available, what it looks like after this exam. We can follow up with you. And all of those individual pieces are, again, they're free and confidential. We're not telling anybody that we're working with you, and we're just there to empower our survivors. A lot of times when our survivors do go to the hospital for these exams, if their clothes are taken as part of the exam, we do have new clothing available so that they don't have to go home in scrubs. And I think that's something that we don't really think about as part of that, is losing your clothing. So we're always taking donations of brand new like sweats and sweatshirts and underwear, socks, pieces like that, so that people can go home with dignity after going through that exam.
I just want to echo that those advocacy services are so very, very important to survivors. Crisis line support is so important. So those local resources are really, really valuable. There is a population of people who they're not ready to pick up the phone and call somebody yet, or they're not ready to go to the hospital. And we have a website called seekthanspeak.org. And it offers a safe place where a survivor or their loved one can gather information. They can learn what it means to have a medical forensic exam. They can learn about what it looks like to report to law enforcement. It even has information to help them define what happened to them. So I want to make sure that everybody knows that that's available. And then of course, as I've mentioned before, the Start by Believing program, and I can add the websites for both of those in the chat.
And I just went ahead and added the Seek Then Speak, but if you'd like to add the Start by Believing, I think that would be fantastic. Thank you. Do you want to open it up again? If there's any questions from the participants today, please feel free to enter it into the chat, or feel free to use the raise hand feature. Okay, I don't think I'm seeing any additional questions coming in. And certainly our guests will be on for a little bit longer to be able to address any questions. If you need to have a private conversation with either of our featured resources today, please feel free to private message me in the chat, and we can certainly connect you in a breakout room as well. So I think my last question that I would want to ask of both you, Allison, as well as Bridget from over at Lutheran, what's the biggest piece of advice that you can offer to anyone trying to help create a more trauma-informed approach to supporting, to empowering, to, again, just helping to create that culture of support and advocacy for survivors?
Start by believing.
Yeah.
I mean, it's such a valuable piece, because as I mentioned, that initial disclosure, that initial response to that very first disclosure truly has a means to make or break what happens for that survivor. If they get a negative reaction, they might not tell anybody else, and that can impact their healing. It can also impact their ability to seek justice because they might not ever tell law enforcement. So we know that that initial response has such a significant impact on their ability to heal that it's so important that that person responds appropriately and with support.
Absolutely. Bridget, any additional thoughts on that?
You know, I definitely, I was going to say exactly what Allison was saying, the Start by Believing. As community advocates, we work really closely with our local law enforcement so that they will take on that additional campaign of Start by Believing. And we've seen some really positive changes in the behaviors and dynamics of law enforcement working with survivors. So again, just if you're out there and you know somebody, just let them know that you do believe them and that you'll help them figure out resources and pieces like that.
Thank you both. Charlene, any additional questions or final thoughts that you have that you would want to ask of our featured guests today?
I can't think of any questions that I have, but I just wanted to thank you both for joining us. And you're very informative, and the resources I think that you provide are wonderful. And just thank you very much. You did an awesome job. Thank you.
Absolutely, and we certainly want to encourage the folks participating on today's call to take advantage of looking at the resources that have been included in the chat. Again, we are recording today's session. This will be posted on our SEC Bigfoot Experience YouTube as well as Facebook, and we will certainly include some of those resource links as well. when that's uploaded. And in a shameless plug, I am uploading a link to the chat right now for a brief 5-minute survey. If you can let us know what you thought of today's event and any ideas that you have for additional events we can host like this. We want to continue to be a sounding board for resources and opportunities to learn, and remembering that we're all in this together through this difficult period. We want to continue to support one another and to remember we're all part of a larger community. So I want to say from the bottom of our hearts at SCC and the SCC Cares program, thank you to both Allison and Bridget for joining us today. I think you provided great enlightenment and empowerment to better understanding the experiences of survivors and figuring out how we can best support and work towards building that culture of support on our campus. So thank you both.
Thanks for having us.
Absolutely.
And just one last piece, even if people have questions or would like education materials, things like that, you can still call our 24/7 crisis support line. We'll be able to hook you up with one of the advocates to have a conversation later on about how you can fundraise or do volunteer work, pieces like that. Our volunteer team is the backbone of our program. We couldn't do our day-to-day work without having our incredible volunteers. So there's ways to help to work closely with EVAWI, and yeah, just give us a call. We're here to help educate as well.
Awesome. Thank you, Bridget. All right. Well, that concludes today's Featured Resources Hour. And we appreciate all of our participating resources and Violence Against Women International and Lutheran Community Services Northwest. Big thank you to Charlene Springer, our Awareness and Prevention Education Programmer at SCC, and to all of our participants that took part in today's call. Again, if you're interested in any of the resources or links we talked about today, and you're not seeing them in the group chat, feel free to reach out to awareness@scc.spokane.edu. We'll also be posting on our social media and on our Bigfoot Experience app. So thank you for your time today, ladies, and I hope you have a great rest of your week and a great rest of your Sexual Assault Awareness Month. We look forward to working with y'all again real soon.
Thank
Great,
you.
thanks for having us.
Absolutely.